channels that purport to teach the user, the watcher, the viewer, how to fence. Something, how to do a parry, how to do a lunge, how to do this, how to do that. Some of them are very highly regarded. Some of them I have never seen before. I started fencing before YouTube became really popular. So just give me a hot second here. Low key powered robot. You can hear Paramore in the background. Whatever, man, Paramore is great. Pop out the chat. Yeah, it's my stream. I was 100% listening to Paramore. Just to, get in the mood, as it were, for fencing. It's great. I love Paramore. Highly recommended. Okay. Quick tell people I'm live. Okay. Yeah, Paramore's great. Everybody loves Paramore. Okay. First we have S-Class. S-Class is Eli Schenkel's channel. Eli Schenkel is a Olympic foilist from Canada. Kind of a funky dude. He's got great hair. And he posts a lot of really interesting takes on fencing. We're going to look at his mongoose style fencing, his one basic technique, and then maybe whatever else interests us. All right, so mongoose style, because this one gets a lot of flack.
So let's get into it. First of all, for those of you who didn't watch Discovery Channel or Animal Planet, if that's still a thing, when you were a kid, a mongoose is basically a fancy death weasel. They're probably most famous for their ability to kill dangerous venomous snakes, like cobras and black mambas. How do these little guys do this? Well, the first reason is that they are one of 4 known mammalian taxa with mutations in the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, which help them survive snake venom by preventing the neurotoxin from binding. While this sure is a neat little fact, it doesn't really help us with our fencing. What we can take from mongoose is its fighting style. You'll notice in this video, the mongoose circles around the serpent on the periphery of its striking distance.
Yeah, I fixed it.
The mongoose dips in and out of its striking distance, threatening from different angles, sneaking either close enough to bite, or provoking the snake to strike from too far away, giving it time to react, dodge, and bite its neck. In fencing, we can't dance circles around our opponent because we're only allowed to move forward and backward, but we can jump in and out of distance. Here we're going to touch on some of the concepts from our previous videos, namely distance, stances, and tempo, and compare them to how the mongoose does things. Just to recap for those that missed those videos, there are 3 kinds of distance. Number 1 is striking distance, the distance you can strike. Careful though, if you can strike your opponent, it normally means they can strike you too.
Absolutely.
Number 2 is critical distance. This is the distance just outside of striking distance. From here we are defended, but we can also provoke our opponent by crossing into striking distance, making it useful to set up actions. This is the distance we recommend fencing.
This is what I call 2-tempo distance.
Number 3 is preparation, or far distance. Simply put, both fencers are too far away to realistically hit one another. While it's true that you could potentially rush in if your opponent is unsuspecting or asleep or something, realistically, they're going to have time to defend, and this is true the other way around. If they attack you, you're going to have time to do something. As we can see here, the mongoose knows this too, instinctively staying at a distance where any advances it makes towards the snake keep it scared. Both animals know this fight can be over in an instant, just like a fencing touch. Now let's get into stances. As we stated in our video on the subject, different stances have different advantages and disadvantages. Classic en garde offers a good balance of techniques and options. However, jumping from classic en garde is different from the hop that we're going to cover in this video. To do the mongoose hop, we're going to change our en garde position into what we call the mongoose stance. Our balance is the same as an en garde, with our hips flat and centered between both of our legs. The difference
While in your stance, balancing on the balls of your feet, your weight should be evenly distributed between both legs for an easy jump forward or backwards. He's teaching foilists to do an épée bounce. Love to see it.
We're sitting a little bit higher, and to compensate, our legs and feet are going to be slightly further apart, winding our stance, while we shift our weight to the balls of our feet as we can see my brother doing here. Notice that he's no longer putting his heels on the floor. The cost of mongoose stance.
There's a reason heels getting knocked back on your heels is an expression. It really means, like, you just, all sports are better when you're on your toes a little bit forward, weight forward and ready to go.
While constantly jumping. Note, the smaller jumps the better, because the less time in the air means the less of a chance for your opponent to catch you off guard.
Yep. In épée, my coach taught us you bounce from just on your ankles. Nothing else gets involved. Just your foot goes up and you go a little bit. It's just enough to keep your legs active. Lee versus Itkin.
Let's take a few looks at some examples on the senior circuit. Here we can see Lee and Itkin, aka the People's Champ, in the CIP 2019 competition.
I do love me some Itkin.
Itkin boasts one of the strongest defenses in the circuit. However, Lee is able to break through by doing small little movements. Even when Itkin finds the blade, he can't really punish it because Lee is already on one tempo ahead, jumping back, ready to retake. The cool thing about mongoose style is that it can also serve as a defensive option. In this example, Lee crosses into and out of Itkin's distance while retreating.
Yeah, the whole idea is that your opponent never quite sure whether or not they can hit you.
When he crosses an Itkin striking distance, he immediately strikes forward, knowing that Itkin is probably ready.
And that you use that to provoke a reaction.
It's important to remember that the point of this video isn't to jump around like a madman. If you watch the rest of the bout, both fencers are constantly changing what they are doing. Rather, the point is that this is an option that exists, and we hope that you can use it to expand your repertoire. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support us and learn some exercises that you can use to train mongoose style, hit us up via email.
So yeah, that's just good fencing. That's not even weird or strange. He's teaching foilists to bounce like an épée. You wait in distance or not in distance, and you go back and forth, constantly confusing them, and constantly applying and reducing pressure. That's just good fencing. It's not even weird. Let's see a basics video. Obviously, Eli Schenkel is going to know fencing very well. He's an Olympian. How to multiply seated lunge drill. That looks weird. Let's watch that one.
Here we have an extension drill, which is going to focus on just the upper body. You'll notice I'm sitting with my knees pointed at the camera, and I'm rotating them out to go to a proper en garde. You'll notice if I sit up a little bit,
it's a deep en garde.
So I don't need to worry about my legs. I'm just focusing on how to deliver the point. I'm reaching here, as opposed to this, which is a lean, and then a hit.
Yep.
So with this drill, one of the main things we're going to look for is not doing this, where we lift our head and throw our hand forward, but instead keep our chin and our shoulders relaxed.
Yeah, you reach out and you touch your opponent. You don't punch them, you don't grab at them, you just touch them.
So I can practice doing it with a lunge. Notice my back leg is not pushing. I'm just reaching until I hit the target, and then I'm letting my front foot kick out so I don't fall on my face.
Well, he's moving his foot before he hits, but yeah.
Now that pop that you just saw is what we're looking for.
I'm gonna go back a bit. Let's see this one more time.
You'll notice if I sit up a little bit, I'm going to be in my actual en garde, so I don't need to worry about my legs. I'm just focusing on how to deliver the point. I'm reaching here, as opposed to this, which is a lean and then a hit.
He's saying you lean as part of the hit.
I'm reaching here as opposed to this, which is a lean.
Okay, so he's saying arm up, shoulder up as you go forward.
So with this drill,
I don't know if that's
main piece that we look for,
arm up,
not
shoulder
doing
up
this,
as you go
where
forward.
we lift our head and throw our hand forward, but instead keep our chin and our shoulders relaxed.
It's called a line for a reason. You go in a straight line to your opponent.
So I can practice doing it with a lunge. Notice my back leg is not pushing. I'm just reaching until I hit the target, and then I'm letting my front foot kick out so I don't fall on my face.
One of the things he's not talking about here, but that's really important, is you don't get distance with a lean, you get distance with your feet. So you extend, you can't reach, you go forward with your feet, take a step, take a lunge, whatever,
To further showcase
and not lean forward.
keeping the chin and the shoulders relaxed,
Amber, I'm glad you like
you'll
it.
see me do the same exercise with a mask on.
Yeah.
So here's a lean, then a punch. That's no good. You'll notice, if you look at the leaf, I'm basically looking up. I have room to relax my shoulders.
Other things that's wrong with that is that
Relaxation.
when you start with your shoulder like that,
I'm not actually
that's your opponent's cue that you're doing something, but you haven't threatened them yet. So your net time to
where I
target
launch my arm.
is slower when you start like this. This might be more of an épée thing, but your time to target when you start like this is actually longer than if you start like this from the time of the action when your opponent can react to it, even though when you throw your punch out like that, your arm feels like it's going faster. It's not supposed to go faster, it's supposed to be smooth, minimize distance. And then if you lean over an épée, you expose your arm and you miss target, you land flat, all kinds of bad things start happening. But yeah, that was pretty good. Highly recommend Eli Schenkel. Alright, next we have swordsman Australia.
Got it.
A fencer from South Korea, coaching in Australia, studying physiotherapy. Maybe he's got a physio part here. Started fencing when I was in middle school in Busan. Completed the elite fencing program at Donggi University in South Korea. Currently studying a bachelor's of physiotherapy in Sydney. What do we got? Ooh, prep steps. Love me some prep steps. I will not comment on the saber drills because I don't know them. Alright, where's that prep step video? 5 different prep steps. Prep steps. Say that 5 times fast. Advance. See what we got. 1 step, 2 step, 1 step variations, balestra and skip. Shim Yung Gi. Maybe there's captions. No captions. Oh. Front foot first, back foot second. Pretty basic. Clearly good at footwork, not really doing a lot of explaining. Not explaining how to use it or why to use it. This is a very saber prep. Where because you're constantly going forward, you do two quick steps and then a slow step. Whereas in épée, you would do a quick step and then a pause. Let's watch that one more time. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. Looked like there's an extra movement there for a second. Yeah, that's pure saber. You're never doing anything like this where you drop your back foot back to make it look like you're going less distance. But I think it does work in saber. You just wouldn't do that in épée. Maybe it works in saber. Again, not doing a lot of like explaining. Am I reviewing any Fencer's Edge stuff? I believe they are on the list, yes. And we will talk about, oh my God, Balestra. My first ever coach back in 2010 loved Balestras. These are really big Balestras. And it's useful as a tempo change, where instead of your feet going bum 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 bum, they go boom boom, and that kind of a thing can throw off your opponent. Get your back foot on the ground a little faster, your front foot a little later. Kind of out of date though, considering how much bouncing everybody already does, at least in épée. Good, just a lot of commitment. How old is this video? Nobody does that anymore. 2022? I don't think this one's useful. There was a fad, probably when this guy was coming up, where in Saber you would hop with your back leg down the strip because the touch doesn't end until your foot hits the ground. But referee changes have kind of gotten rid of that completely. So it's a hop, and then you would lunge at that point when the back foot hits the ground, just to slow down when you lose right of way. But nobody really does that anymore. All right. Not great as a lesson. Not great as a, I don't know, those aren't prep steps, those are just steps. Fencing lunge. See this.
In this video, I'm gonna show you how to do the basic fencing lunge.
Alright, we got audio.
Starts moving towards the opponent's target first, and
Yep.
then the toes on the front foot start to raise. Kick
Nope.
out from the back leg and push your front leg forward. The heel of your front foot lands on the ground first,
Yep.
followed by the rest of the foot. Let's have a look at the slow process.
So this is biomechanically just not what happens, which is a fancy word for it, just not what your body actually does. You can't lift your toe, like you're going forward, you can't lift your toe because that forces your foot backwards a little bit. You have to lift your heel, then your toe, then you can go forward. Toe first is a mnemonic they use to teach to land heel first. Heel first is very important, but you don't need the mnemonic for it. You can just think heel first or kick out your leg or whatever you want to get that to work. But it's always going to be toe, heel, toe, kick. Especially in Saber, when you're always moving forward for a lunge. You're always doing an advanced lunge. It's always heel, toe, and then land on the heel. Landing on the heel is important because if you try to land flat, you're stealing a lot of distance from yourself and also probably hurting your leg. If you got video of this guy fencing, it would not look like this. It would look like a heel toe kind of a kick. I don't know if the arm demonstrations are useful. I can't lunge right now, but Sydney Saber has a really good article on this. I think somebody just posted on Reddit a really good article about this.
As you can see in the finishing position here, my front knee has a 90-degree angle over my front foot, and both the sole arm and the back leg are totally straight.
That's also very classical and very not, especially not how you want to do Saber, because in Saber, a full extended arm can end your attack. You definitely want to be holding your attack in Saber for a little bit longer, and especially in foil, you want to be holding your lunge. You want to be holding your arm until you're ready to hit. In épée, you want to go arm first, but that's really just an épée thing. Give me a hot second. Somebody posted a video of, not a video, an article about this exact thing that we can look at real quick. There we go, perfect. The Dave Littell. So this guy, he knows what he's doing, but he's not a very good teacher, and he's teaching very outdated things. Dave Littell. I got this from Lake FX on Reddit, who is a pretty good fencer in his own right.
There are certain movements of fencing that are common to all three weapons. Clearly the advance, retreat, half advance, half retreat, lunging. So in this segment we're going to cover each of those movements, really focusing very carefully on the technique. When you go to
That's the article.
In the on-guard position, it's very important to make sure that you properly bend your ankles, knees, and hip joints. Most people have a lot of trouble with this.
Interesting.
One thing that's very helpful when you start to bend,
I never thought about the hip joints.
push through the tops of your feet, make sure your knees are soft, and then bend your ankles, and your knees will go out nicely, and your body will stay up.
God, that's so hard though.
But to get proper movement,
You
very
need such
helpful
strong
to do
ankles.
what I call weight transfer exercise.
This is a coach for coaches. I've talked about this on the fencing Discord a couple of times. It's very hard to do this if you're not already an athlete, because you just don't have the sense of where your ankles are to be able to bend them. If you can, it's great. If not, you need to work to develop that. It does seem like good advice. I have not honestly considered this angle, and I do kind of like it.
So you start with a very wide on guard position, bend properly, and here I want to take my weight back. The act of moving from backwards to forwards, what I want to make sure I do is bend my ankle and knee goes forward as I stay back, and then my body moves forward
That
until
tracks.
I firmly feel this foot. Now I'm going to go the other direction, begin with the back ankle and knee, body weight follows, and I feel quite a bit of movement in my hip joints when I do it this way.
Interesting.
Most people that try this exercise without instruction will go like this. Boom, boom, boom. Moving without any movement in the hips, the whole body, we don't have any separation between the legs and the torso. Everything goes at once. Instead of moving the legs and then the body. And there's a lot more movement in here. So when you're moving into
That's
half
a
advance,
bit much.
think a lot about the order of the movement. The beginning of the movement, if I'm on guard with my weight balanced between both feet, there's a little shifting to the back foot so I can
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look. There we go. Look at that. He's got heel first, just like I said.
release the front foot to move.
Yeah, body awareness is underrated. And coaches and athletes don't even realize that a lot of people don't have it.
So I'm here and I release, and now I move this foot forward without any weight. Now I want to put my foot down, bend my ankle, knee, come to the center. I'm done with the half advance. Similarly, with a half retreat, I want to aim my way to the front foot by bending, release the back, reach back, put the foot down, come back.
I like this, not as a description of how to do this movement, as a way to break it down and make you really feel every part of it. And that will lead to a greater sense of body awareness and a better ability to feel it inbound and when you're practicing the realistic actions.
Weight transfer exercise. The problem with half advances and retreats is that people don't separate their legs from their torso. So usually when it's wrong,
Developed all of your awareness through physical
body moving
therapy.
forward to
Yeah,
get
it is.
good separation instead of legs moving, body following. After doing a half advance,
Okay, so what I don't like about this specifically is that breaking it up this far makes it too slow. Step, 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 step. There's a hard limit to how fast you can go doing that. When you kind of need to let it flow a little bit more and be a little bit less precise. I don't know if he's going to talk about that. So this is very good for slow movement and for beginning. So highly recommended for that. But it is important to build flow as well.
or half retreat. I like practicing half advance into a retreat or half retreat into an advance.
Oh yeah, that's a great exercise.
Weight stays back. Here's my half advance. Comes to the center, goes through the center a little bit, releasing the back foot, finish the step. And let's do that again.
Yeah.
Nice beginning half step, center, a little past the center, so my weight's on the front foot, retreat.
That's interesting.
On the
I do my half advances differently, or I specifically don't shift my weight all the way forward. And it's a it's a half advance, and then I use my front leg muscles to push myself backwards in a mini jump. This comes partially from a bad habit I had when I was starting out, where I would come too far forward in an advance and come with my weight all the way over my front leg. So I developed a very strong habit of just keeping my weight far back in an advance. Mine is a little bit more explosive, but his isn't bad. His seems very smooth. And if you do that, I can see it very, very easily tricking a lot of people, and it takes less energy.
Half retreat advance, I'm going to aim to the front leg, release the back, move slowly to the center. Now find the back leg fully, release the front, and go forward. If we're practicing a full advance, we want to practice that in slow motion.
Small steps important for that too, because you just run out of leg length.
Weight stays back, reach to the center. Now find the front foot, bend the knee forward, and finish the step. Advances and retreats should accelerate. In most cases, they start quite slowly and then they end quickly. So let's.
That's also interesting.
So
I've only ever thought of doing a fast advance or slow advance.
slowly and then finish.
No, I have,
We can do that with a
but that's
retreat.
good. That's a really good tip.
Slow and finish quickly.
Changing this.
Coming from a little push from the back leg.
Yeah.
The quickness also comes from making sure that you bend your knee quickly. So when I'm here, as I'm finishing this step, if there's good knee and ankle bend, that helps pull me forward. When we really get the order of movement correct, staying on this.
Heel down
reaching
first
back,
important too in
staying
an
on the
advance
back
like
foot,
this.
reaching forward. It allows you to take steps of different lengths without much trouble. So I can start to reach back and then turn it into a big step, or I can reach and take a small step. Practicing jumping forward and back helps emphasize good footwork and it reminds you that fencing footwork isn't that different than jumping. So we've been emphasizing really staying.
So it seems like he's done with that section, but I want to talk about pushing off with the back leg. You should basically always be doing that, especially in épée. The only real difference between an advance and a lunge is, like an advance is just a really tiny lunge, and then a lunge is a full length advance, and then you can vary your sizes in between.
Back and I'm having a lot of movement through the back hip joint as we go forward. And if I jump, the difference between jumping and advancing is my front foot's in the air as I move the back foot. There's a nice natural movement, bending, reaching, and jumping. Reach and jump. So here's a retreat, here's an advance, here's a jump, here's a jump. They're not very different.
I'm not sure why he's talking about jumping. The only jump in fencing really is a balestra in footwork, and that wasn't a balestra because his feet were landing at very different times. That's probably pretty useless, but the rest of this is good so far.
Most of our steps start slow and end fast. We've talked about that already, but sometimes you start a quick step. So when you go slow, you swing slowly with the front leg and you push. Swing slowly and push. When you go fast, all that you do is you bend a little quicker and swing a little quicker. I think about the knee bend, so I bend quickly to go quickly. So the beginning of a swing with the front leg starts with the knees going out. So if I think knees out, go. Knees out, go. One thing I find very helpful when you're tying your steps together is
Yeah, so
it's
this
all
is the
really
flow.
about coordinating your 2 feet. So I like this action. You lift your back foot up and you put it down. And as you do that, you're releasing your front foot. So I call it lift the foot, drop and step. And if I can do that,
That's
now
so
I
smooth.
can very nicely go from one step into a second step. Step, drop, step. You see, as I'm dropping, as I'm landing in this foot, I'm already releasing the other foot.
Do more than 2, please.
You definitely want to practice being able to change speeds from slow to fast and from fast to slow. So here's.
Do I think jumps are still useful in
slow
épée?
and slow again. So I'm gonna take a slow
Balestras are
step,
situationally
and
useful
then
because it
reach
changes
again.
the tempo of your footwork,
Slow step.
and that can confuse your opponent.
I'm gonna go slow to
The
fast.
jump he was doing is not useful
If we
anymore.
wanted to go fast, we just thought about kicking out the knees a little bit. So I sink and reach out, slow, fast.
I don't like that he's bending his knees to
Very
take a
helpful
step.
to confuse your
Your knees should be pre-bent, and you just be able to do it immediately.
There are a lot of situations in fencing where I want to give my opponent the sense that they're going to catch me, so I stay put for a moment. So if mechanically to do that, I want to make sure I stay in movement the whole time. So I'm moving this leg, releasing the back one, and then moving backwards. So I'm going to stay there, release the back, and go. So it would be step, hold, move.
Bounce.
Or let's do that again. Step, pause, move. In this hesitation before you go back.
So this has actually circled around to be something people do nowadays, where they'll do a half advance and then sink into it to give the illusion of motion without actually having any. And it's really fun to watch. Cohen does it a lot.
You're bending this front knee a lot, which really gives the opponent the sense that you're going forward. That will help them think they should finish or they should react to that.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Yeah. So this is pretty good. A little out of date. You can tell because it's got an MSN.com email. But pretty good beyond that. Let's watch one more so we know when everybody else is. Oh, this was really good. We're gonna watch that. Let's do one variations.
When I work with new fencers, I always go through some preparatory movements before I put them in an awkward on guard position and trying to get them to understand movement of fencing. All right, let's start off. The first thing we want to do is just bend the knees. So we get shoulders width apart, keep the weight forward, we want to lift through the chest. I'm going to bend the ankles, knees, and hip joints. So we want to just stay up as we come down. Now let me do that sideways. So I always encourage people to bend their ankles first and bring their calves forward, but you also have to cooperate and bend in the hip joint here too. So we want to look like this. The next movement would just be a jump. So we want to get used to bending and moving up, and I just like someone going down and then coming up into the balls of their feet. So they feel how they use their feet when they move.
Oh, good. Okay, so that was episode 2. This is episode 1, and he's teaching how to get that proprioception, that awareness of your body.
Bending the legs.
This is phenomenal.
Go into one leg or the other, and freeing the opposite leg. So I go into the right leg, and my left leg releases. I go into my left leg, and my right leg is free.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see a shift
That's really
like
good.
this. I want to see the shift really occurring mostly just with bending the hips, knees, and ankles. So if I release one foot, then I want to start playing around with moving that foot around. So I'm on this foot, I have my balance, I have my up direction with my head, and I want to have freedom here. And then
The feel of tension in your legs tells you which one has the balance on it.
Explore a little bit of this moving forward, what it's like to move forward, because we do that a lot in fencing when we advance or lunge. And the beginning of the movement, the knees both come forward, so the knees move out, and I get this nice round swinging motion, which ends with my heel moving and my heel landing. So the next thing I would do is take a full step to the side. So we work on releasing, weight goes into this foot, release this foot, reach to the side. Now I'm going to slowly, as I stay here, I'm going to slowly move my weight towards my right foot. And when I feel completely, I still got a connection with this foot to the ground, but my weight is mostly here. Once I'm here, I can finish the step.
And then right back in that first position. He's building off it really well.
You can explore with this movement is if someone comes here, and I want them to feel their weight on this foot when they move off of it or onto this foot and off of this one. But I don't want them to come way over here. If they do, their hips move too much, their feet come together, and no weight comes onto this foot. To teach half advance retreat or half retreat advance, if you practice this move, into one foot, reach, find that foot, and now reach the other way and take a step. Or go into this foot.
Oh, that's a really good
take
drill.
a step, reach, and go the other way. So a lot of people will do this, they'll go clunk, clunk. And
Yeah.
that really goes much more slowly, and it's much more difficult to go the other direction. But if I let my knee bend the whole time, all right, many fencing steps are accelerating. So we start off, and before we fully weighted this foot, we move the other foot. So many of us learn to advance or retreat this way, where we come to here and then we finish the step. Okay, so I would say that the concept here is before I'm fully weighted, my weight's here, I push off, I call it a jump, but it can be I can touch down and move, or I can do
This
it
is so
sooner,
good.
which really is a jump.
If you feel like your advances are awkward, do drills like
It's
this,
just the timing
and
of
you'll
when
really
I
get
push
the
off
sense of
and
how
when I
your body is
push
moving.
this foot. Walking forward from this low
You'll be able to
position,
cue in that
going
sense
clearly from a
to
high
what
position, I
your
can swing my legs and go forward.
body is actually doing, especially if we can get it on video.
From here, I still want that same freedom of swinging legs, and
Yeah.
I just reach forward and finish. What's different about this than normal walking, and what's awkward for people, is when they approach right here, we're used to coming up and over our leg instead of letting the knee lead and stay in front of you. That's what's really different about fencing than walking. Another thing they struggle with is if they haven't bent properly to come to here, they'll look like this.
Bend your
They have a
knees,
nice
bend your
easy
knees,
swing,
bend your
and
knees.
we're working on
If you're not sure if your
driving
knees
those
are bent enough, bend them
forward
more.
with each step.
And then more after that.
really helps someone understand the end of the advance, that the knee has to come forward. When you're leaning into a wall, gravity is clearly
cow.
pulling you towards the wall.
This
And
is so
you feel like
intense.
you're falling into it. And you need, with your arms, to oppose the wall, push against the wall to go anywhere. So if I want to move, I'm always moving in opposition to the wall. What I'm really trying to get at is if we go to stand up, and we just said, okay, what's the force of gravity as we're moving around? Well, I'm really opposing. When I'm moving, I'm opposing the floor. So then I put, after that exercise, we go right to here with the feet wide apart, bend the knees a little bit, and try and get that same feeling that we just had with the hands against the wall, with our feet against the floor, feeling like we're moving
Okay, that's
in
interesting.
opposition to that. And if we move around, we try and
You
feel
have to
the
feel like you're
connection
actively pushing
of
against the
both
floor
feet
instead of
against
just passively
or
resisting it
against
with
the force of
your
gravity.
with your
We're
stance
moving
and your
in
muscles.
opposition, we're moving
You have to feel like you're
away.
actively pushing it.
When you're teaching the lunge, one of the hard parts is to get someone to understand that their weight needs to stay back on the back leg as they begin to lunge. It really requires a lot of movement in this hip joint in order to do that. There has to be sort of a settling in and a moving here to keep the weight back. Well, to teach that concept to a new fencer, I really like this movement. It's just a big step forward. And to keep my balance on a really large step, I need to really bend.
Okay.
If I'm going to stay upright, I don't want to lean this way. So if I want to stay upright, I need to bend in this hip joint a lot in order to keep my balance.
I've always felt
as
of
I
this
take
as a
great
keeping
big
your weight
step
back
forward.
and feeling where your
And
weight
work
is,
with
but
the
he's
leg
right that
a little
it
bit. I also
involves
wanna
that
work
hip
with the
joint.
arms. So I want someone to understand that if they're going to move in fencing, they need to move in their shoulder joint. From there,
This is what I wanted
do
from
is
that
just
physiotherapy guy.
Bend the elbows and see if I get that same freedom of movement forward and back. So then I'm getting closer to fencing, and if I can get this, now I've got a nice extension. And when you're doing this exercise, swinging, bending, and swinging, if somebody really looks bad, if they go like this and then they bend and they all of a sudden don't have any movement in the shoulders, what's happened is that when they bent their arms, they pulled their shoulders up and in and tightened.
Tensed up. Yeah.
So it sometimes
See
it's
this a
very
lot
useful
in
to just
extensions.
Work with bending the arms, bending the elbows correctly. Bending the elbow requires movement in the shoulder joint. If I swing the arms like this, then I really feel the weight of my arms, and that little swinging motion helps usually free the elbows. Once we have that motion, I want to also be able to bend easily to the side. And once I'm here, now I start moving those elbows away from
Okay,
the
so
side.
this is how he's building up
Say
for the
elbows
extension.
stay down and they move out to the side. This really helps them understand how to extend properly.
These are good drills to know if you're a
Versus putting
coach,
them on guard and
because
saying,
you're going to
"Never
get a
mind, this
student
happens."
who needs
This
this.
is what's happening.
If you're a reasonably athletic person
Now
or
I would
you've
start
done
playing
sports in the
with
past,
coordination of the arms and legs.
could be less
So
useful.
someone has a nice
You've got your own
leg back,
cues
they can
already.
stay upright, and they can move
But
this
if you
way.
don't, if you
Say,
find
let's start
actions hard to
coordinating
understand and
a little
do,
bit of the beginning of an
definitely check this
extension
out.
With the leg bend. So I can begin with the arms and then bend, or I can begin with the legs and then extend. We do all those things in fencing. We go hand first into the movement. We go start to move, and sometimes we just do it together. Now we're just going to move. We're going to move one arm as we move
Boogie
away
boogie.
from one leg or
Do a
the
little
other.
boogie.
So let's say I'm left-handed. If I just
Good.
move
That's why he's
my
such a good
left
coach.
arm out as I go into my right leg, or my left arm out as I go into my left leg. So now I'm getting the coordination. This would be the coordination of a lunge. This would be the coordination of a hidden step back. Now
He's
the
a
last
foilist.
piece of that is to actually extend the arms as you're moving. Let's say a step. I take a step this
I
way.
think I disagree with that one thing, which is
So
that your
remember, we
arms should be
started off,
independent
weight
of
goes
your
into
legs.
This leg, reach and push. Leg goes in this leg, reach and push. So I could say extend and step.
That's
extend
wonderful.
as
I
the
love how
weight
he
goes into
ties it all
the
together like this.
Well, now I'm really teaching the coordination of a lunge. Okay, with the hand going first. Hand and then move. Hand and then move. Now similarly, I can teach the coordination of a flesh. Now as I extend, my weight goes into the same foot. So I can teach this. Or I can go into this foot, push this way. All of those movements, then as a whole, they really work well to help the newcomer get
That's
used
so
to the
good. This
fencing
is a
movement, and now
phenomenal
you're
lesson. I
ready
wish
to
more
do my
people have
guard.
seen this. 20,000 views. That deserves so many more. All right. That was really good. Highly recommended for anybody. Go watch everything he's got. Oh no, that was Swordsman Australia. Did I do this first one? Ah. Hema. Just for shits and giggles, let's see what a Hema lesson looks like. No, I want that up. I want that space. That's not great because they're doing it at a set distance every time. I promised my friend who sent this to me that I wouldn't be too harsh on them, but we'll see. Sequence 7. It's 8. What is he doing? So this looks like an opposition combination beat. So you beat and you extend and then you end up somewhere in the torso area. Fuelinless. Win center line, but it's angle and position. That's how you do fencing. That's for sure. Not by force, by leverage. Can't convince me that that's safe. You can't convince me coming into the arm back like that is safe. A straight extension and you're total. Okay, so that's dangerous. Doing it against a standstill opponent. There we go. Okay, now we got a moving opponent. At a set speed. Yes, so if your opponent just runs at you, you can hit them. Seems like there's very little displacement. I can't tell if this is something you do in reaction to your opponent, or if this is something you do offensively, or if they just do it all of them. So his opponent is stopping. I wonder if that's part of the action, is that if you get your blade in their chest, they'll stop. That's a kendo thing. He just whiffed. This is just a straight cut counterattack. Okay. Not a high level of explanation. You didn't take enough longsword to have any insights here. I'm trying to be nice. I don't think there are a lot of insights to have here. Oh look, I'm getting recommended this stream right now here. It's a move that they're showing off in a bunch of different areas. It doesn't look like it's well suited for all of those areas, and it doesn't look like it's well thought out. It's very, very open to straight counterattacks. It's very, very open to like a slight mistiming. All right, How to Fencing by Eric and Tim. will learn correct technique. With breakdown various drills for you to practice, will help you out tactically with your fencing, and most importantly, you are welcome to ask questions and do our best to make you a better fencer. Toronto and New York fencing. You love this channel? Well, thank you. That's very nice to hear. Tim is great. Do you have any recommendations for what to watch? How to control distance. I think that's just a lesson.
Okay. A little bit. Discipline. Good. Up, get out.
Okay. That looked good for giving a lesson. So here's the problem. The intent of this stream here is lessons that teach the viewer something, not watching them giving a lesson. Which is why I'm not picking any of these. Shireen Sham. A lot of the videos are recorded lessons. How to successfully counterattack. That's Sam. No. Quick adjust.
Hello everyone,
Oh,
Fencing
good.
Coach Tim is here, and today we'll show you how to successfully counterattack your opponent.
Excellent.
As you can see over here, the first important thing is that you don't want to just wait and guess when opponent will attack you.
Yeah,
First thing you
100%.
wanna do is you want to provoke your opponent to make an attack, so that way you're prepared to do something about it. As you can see here with the small steps, my student is approaching and trying to step into the distance. And then abruptly, on my step forward, he attacks in a short distance, something around my wrist.
Okay. First thing, super important, they're moving as they do a lesson. And second thing that's super important is the student is setting the distance. You want, the coach doesn't need to know the distance, the student needs to know the distance. Third thing is that not everything the student does is getting a response. You have to know to do the cue, wait to see, do the prep, see if you get the action, and then reset whether or not you do. So this is really good so far. All the people in his videos have way better point control than me. I can never get those hits. Could be point control. A lot of it boils down to technique. A relaxed arm like you saw in the Dave Littell video, tip up and just extend through the target. And as you finish your extension, your tip will naturally drop.
If he does that and I extend my arm, then his counterattack comes out. If I do more than just a straight extension, then you can add a disengagement and make a hit as well.
Make him think about it always.
Very important is that even though you could just simply hit and recover, it is much better to, as I showed it there, to step in and make sure your back foot is the first one that steps out, and then the rest of your legs catches up. You see here Jason, he first approaches with his right foot and then left foot steps out, and then he's able to make all of the touches.
Because if you come back with your back leg first, you're still in a fencing position, you're still in on guard, and if it opens up for you to go forward again, which we just saw really,
then the rest of your legs catches up.
you're ready for it.
You see here Jason,
Forward, back,
he
forward.
first approaches with his right foot and then left foot steps out, and then he's able to make all of the touches.
So this is great. Highly recommended. Already know.
Second very important aspect of a successful stop hit is the placement of your tip when you're making that counter
Those are
attack.
iffy.
You
don't
want
want
to
to put
make
glancing
sure
off like that.
that you make a counter attack a little bit deeper and not on the flat parts of the forearm, as you saw just there. Here's a second attempt where Ted does send it a little deeper and the crevice of the elbow catches the tip.
You can get it short.
That will work just like in a real bout as in a lesson. The thicker sleeve does help, but if you have a good point control, you land in the crevice of the elbow, the tip
You
will
can get it to
stick.
bend on the
Successful.
arm if you're good at it. If not, it's fine.
Similarly, you don't necessarily always have to finish with just a counter attack. Some opponents are a little bit more careful and they only do partial attacks. So what you do there is you still will provoke, you attempt to do a counter attack to the forearm or the hand.
Yeah,
that
this
works.
is really good.
But if not,
One
you
prep,
should set up then within
three
that
or
distance,
four
motion,
finishes,
and then
depending on what your
attack
opponent does.
as you see here with the flesh.
If they're just taking parries, flush
That
through, it's so
separates,
good.
makes a
This is
feint
great.
and a flesh with a disengage.
I just cracked my elbow, that
I
hurt
hope
so
this
much.
video helps you with provoking and successfully counterattacking your opponents.
Alright, so that was
If you
great.
have any comments, questions, or suggestions, don't
Is this one...
Your investigation. So I'm not gonna tell you exactly what we're doing. It's gonna be for you to investigate. Let's start with your tip. Okay, I'm 2C, let's go. Please. Like, how it started, the guy just came and kind of like did one, did like kind of like,
See if I can find one more against him. Fixing your point control.
okay. Good.
No. Okay, well that's enough time here. But you know, great channel, highly recommended. Alright, OSM fencing. No, I didn't say enough here. This was a really, really, really good lesson. And you can learn a lot by watching him give lessons. Foil. Lessons, drills, training circuits, news, and bouts for anyone passionate about the sport of fencing. OSM Fencing Club, located in Victoria, BC. All Ages Fencing Club. Okay. We got some club video. We got some Invito. Those aren't. Wow, these are formatted like YouTube playlists, and I thought it was a playlist. Let's see, what do we got? Lunge combinations.
In this lesson, we're going to be looking at different ways to lunge. We're going to be looking at 4 specific combinations. The first one is just the traditional direct attack, but we're going to be looking at 3 slightly different twists to the lunge. Helping me with this lesson will be Coach Isaac and Eva, and we are going to be looking at how these actions work, and more importantly, how to do them. Our first lunge is going to be the direct.
More importantly is
We're
why.
familiar with this action, but what Eva and I are going to do is explain a little bit about when you want to do this action and how. Now, all of these lunges are going to be done from a static position, so if you want to see how they're done when you are moving forward, you'll have to look at a different video for that. Okay.
This better be extremely basic.
In the on-guard position, you're going to want to make sure that your lunge is starting with the hand first. So in the on-guard position, Eva's going to
It's a very non-foil thing to do.
and this is a direct attack. So she goes
Very short lunge. She
direct.
can go a lot deeper.
does
She can
not
get her
do
foot
any
out like
long
here.
lunges. She's not evading my blade. She just lunges directly at the target and then she recovers. So why and when would we want to do this? If your opponent isn't
Why is
doing
good.
anything particularly special, so they're not doing any searches, they're not rapidly advancing into you, they're not trying to break you just want to do a direct attack. So again, if I'm on guard and I'm staying nice and still, I'm not doing any searches, she's just going to execute a direct attack.
Your opponent is never going to be doing that. They're never not going to be doing anything at any reasonable level. That's a bad thing to train.
The approximate distance to make that hit work. She doesn't want to do a direct attack from too far away. So if she recovers to the blue line and starts a lunge from there, a direct lunge is not going to really find me. It's going to be too far. So again, if she lunges, that's not going to be very effective. So you want to make sure that when you lunge,
Her shoulder is so
especially with
tense.
the direct attack,
I don't know if that's just her lunge or if that's she's just scared about being on camera.
second lunge is a broken time lunge. This is where we are doing an indirect attack. We want to make sure that we can hit without getting parried. Normally you'll see people do a lunge with a disengagement, which is where you're dropping your tip.
Nobody doesn't disengage with her arm extended.
In this case,
Not in
we're going
foil.
to be pulling our arm all the way back so that the extension no longer exists in the space in which the parry is taking place. So we're going to put on our mask.
This is the drawer pull that Sam likes to talk about, Sam Gallagher Pelletier.
And
Penun
first
does it a
one
bunch.
I'm going to do here, I'm not going to do any parry, so Isaac is just going to help show the mechanics of the action. So I'm on guard. He's going to do his lunge with broken tongue, and what you can see there is in his lunge, his arm is coming back, so he's not landing and then pulling his arm back. He is going to do the broken time in the action, so he's still hitting when his foot is landing. Okay, let's do that one more
I
time.
don't
So
like
I'm going
this.
to add the
This is a
parry.
very long action.
We're on guard. He starts his lunge, so he's going to punch, and there's the broken time. So when he pulls his arm, the blade
Requires
is
a lot of
no longer
precision.
in the space in which I am going to be parrying. Now, very important, we don't want to do the broken time attack where a direct attack is going to be perfectly fine. The reason why we're going to employ this is because we are aware that our opponent is very competent.
Doing this well, assuming you can do it at all, is a very high level action. And if he's teaching this at a basic lesson, that's very bad.
Time and space.
It's not very bad, it's bad.
This is only when you are aware your opponent likes to search. And if they're searching, this is the action for you. Our third lunge is going to
The other thing about this is you should never have your arm fully extended lunging in a foil lunge unless you're sure you're going to hit immediately, because it's just giving it to your opponent completely. You lunge and then find some kind of a weird angle. Or you lunge and then extend. But your arm is always so far back, you just never do it like a real broken time attack like that. Two actions, sure, but not as one lunge.
be combining the counter time action. This is where we are actively looking for our opponent's blade while we are making the attack. This isn't something you would do regularly. This is really only an action you would reserve when your opponent is regularly counterattacking. They have strong timing and good point control. You want to find their blade before you hit them. And this is the action we're going to be doing. So we're going to put on our masks. And what you're going to see is Eve is going to engage my blade with a parry while she attacks. It's going to be different than a beat attack. A beat attack is where we're just kind of hitting the blade and then committing. This is where we've already committed. So we're going to do our lunge and attack the blade. So I'm on guard and Eva will start. And there is the counter time action. As she's lunging, she's searching for my blade.
That's not counter time.
This is very important.
That's an
because
opposition.
it allows you to stop your opponent from counterattacking. If they're not counterattacking, this is not the action you want to use.
If your opponent is counterattacking, they're counterattacking into your lunge. So you can't lunge into their counterattack. You can parry their counterattack, but you can't lunge into their counterattack because the counterattack is in response to your lunge.
Final lunge combination is the balestra. We've covered this in a previous lesson, but we're going to be reviewing it again in this lesson and looking at really why we want to use it. So a balestra is essentially a hop where we are crushing the distance so that we can reach our opponent. So you're going to be pushing with your back foot, kicking with your front, and that's reducing the distance so when you do your lunge, you can hit from further away. So, why would we do this? This is probably due to a opponent keeping distance, a very safe distance from us.
Oh no, your opponent's keeping distance. Better do a balestra.
We're going to see how it works, and
do an advance.
the appropriate action.
Well, that's just for, as we said several times, for a
First
tempo
case,
change.
I'm going to explain why a direct attack from this distance doesn't work. If Isaac does a
Admittedly, this is demonstration, but compare this to the Tim and Yarrick lesson, where nothing came static. Everything was on the move constantly. And this is like, it's just almost not worth teaching advanced techniques in a static position.
direct lunge, he falls.
Well, it's worth it
He's not going to find
because you got to start somewhere, but you move on very quickly.
risky one. As a defender, I don't have to do a whole lot. I know he can't reach me. However, if he combines his lunge with a balestra, he's going to initiate the balestra and then lunge, and he can close distance and hit me.
No shot you get all the way here without your opponent doing anything. You would, so this is an advanced lunge with a balestra instead of a lunge for some reason. Like, there's no point to do a balestra here. But the only reason you do something like this in foil is if you're trying to catch a retreating opponent. And even then, it's like a high commitment action. You want to do a less committed way to take space and close the distance,
Without any trouble.
because you're too likely to get parried or something.
So, why the balestra? I'm on guard. I know he can't hit me. I'm not going to be very active in my defense. A direct attack will work, so he's going to execute the balestra. And
What does that even mean? Why are you standing around on defense? Why are you teaching your students to stand around on defense? If somebody's at a long range, they're still actively fencing, or they should be, or they're still looking at you and aware of what you're doing. Just because the distance is safe doesn't mean they're asleep. I really didn't like that at all.
notice that he's not extending his hand in the balestra until he has finished it. He is committing that for the lunge. The reason why? He does not want you to know.
I don't have patience for another hour, for another minute of that. Alright, don't watch this one. Bad channel. This is not the Junyi Chua. I thought it was. This is the Junyi Chua. I thought it was. Tactical wheel. Nothing. Okay. Taka tak. Epee attack phase drill. University of Texas Fencing Club.
Far away. How do I create the distance? First you start a double advanced lunges. Here's how we decide what action comes after. Whether or not we're moving in phase, out of phase. Here's in phase movement. If I advance, he retreats. If I retreat, he advances. We're in phase, and we're just drifting back and forth like this. In phase action is the relative velocity of flow just because we're moving in the same direction.
I really like that he's talking about the distance. I don't like the phrase in phase because it's not about whether you're moving together or not. It's about who's controlling the distance.
Each time, right? Let's say we're moving out of phase. He steps back, and then we both step in. Out of phase makes the actions very close. Now, this is a negotiation.
Yeah, so that's one way to close distance is by stepping in, your opponent step in.
I can interrupt phase if I want to. I can also drift closer, and I can also disrupt the phase, and we can change, and now we're heading in towards each other. So it really just depends on where I want to swing the punch. All right, in phase actions. In phase means at the same time, right? Beat turn is like
Right, so he's saying this like it means something, but all it means is that his student's following his distance.
So here, the far away to beat turn is swing the punch. Opposition there. Here, the far away. Right? So here, the far away to beat.
Why is he attacking though?
Opposition there.
So this is what we talked about, where the Tim and Yarrick drill, the student is setting the distance, and provoking something, And here, like, he's just attacking. He's not doing anything. The student isn't doing anything. Just the coach has decided to attack, and it doesn't teach the student anything because they don't learn it in the correct context.
Because he's reaching. Opposition turn, right?
Ready? I'm going to attack you.
And I have come front card. Okay? Now, close.
Did he just...
Opposition parry works left card. Okay? Now,
allows attacker to feint deceive? That's not an opposition parry. That's just a big parry. I don't know what he's trying to say here. So I think he's like in phase is trying to be 2 tempo distance. But that doesn't make any sense.
and I have come front card. Okay? Now, close. Opposition parry works left. Because we're clashing, right? He'll want to oppose because now I have no here. If I actually try to launch the attack here, that's the opposition. See that? Right?
That's just a regular parry.
We're getting close. Beat parry is probably not going to control my weapon enough. I need to work on it.
Oh, okay. So he's using like beat parry instead of he's an opposition parry instead of regular parry, and then he's invented this concept of a beat parry, which is a foil thing, and then in foil it's just a parry. But you don't really want to use it in epee. Like, you do beat attack on the arm, but you don't really want to use it to control your opponent's blade in any meaningful way. Unless you're like really smacking it out of the way. But he's not doing that here. Alright. That was not great. Although it is pretty standard for the level of college club fencing. That's the Junie Chow one. That's S class. This is unavailable anymore. All right, that is all I have. Any questions from the chat? Let me double check and make sure I got all of the videos I had to cover. I think I had a couple more actually. Oh, Fencer's Edge, of course. And foil fencing with Remy. And Nova Saber. Ah, this is the Nova Fencing Club. How to keep fencing distance. That's most.
You're trying to get close enough to your opponent to tag them, but get away so they don't tag you. This getting closer and moving away from your opponent in fencing is called distance. There are 2 main types of distance in fencing: defense and offense. In defense, you're trying to get as much distance between you and your opponent. That means if they take 2 steps forward, you take 2 steps back.
That's not what it means.
The second type of distance in fencing is offense. This is when you're trying to reach your opponent.
Passive and active is better words for that.
This means that you could be taking 2 steps forward.
One thing she said here, and she said differently before, is that before she said distance is a number of steps, take 2 steps if your opponent takes 2 steps, and here she's saying keep distance, and keep distance is the important one. It doesn't matter how many steps you take, the more the better, but you want to be able to keep distance. If your opponent takes a big step, take 2 small steps, or attack them in that step, whatever. A very pretty low level explanation of things, and I'm not particularly happy with it. Yeah, not great. Fencer's Edge, Coach Tyler. Who are you, Coach Tyler? Florida Fencing Academy. Seven common beginner footwork mistakes. See what he says.
Fencing is an extremely fast game of just centimeters and milliseconds. If your form is off by just a little bit, that could be the difference between you winning the bout and you losing the bout. So as a beginner, it's really important that you focus on building a really strong fundamental base. So when you are practicing, you're practicing having really good and building that, okay? I call it the Tin Man effect, okay? Form and technique. All right, so let's get started with the first and most common mistake that I see most beginners making when they first start off fencing. And that is they are moving with straight legs, okay? I call it the Tin Man effect, okay? They're just
first thing I say to everybody who gets a roast is bend your knees, okay? And then they do it and they say bend them more.
If you have really straight legs, you are going to be really low to the ground. Some of the things that you can do that will help you build that length strength is, number one, a fun way is when you are brushing your teeth in the morning, just brush your teeth in that on-guard position.
When you're making meringues, do it in on-guard position.
Okay. The other things that you can do are check out my beginner footwork videos. Those are great at building leg strength. You can do squats.
It's a pretty quick lunge, but a little short.
Things that you can do to help build that leg strength, and I highly recommend that you do those things. All right, so the next most common mistake that I see a lot of beginners make is that maybe they start with their knees bent, but as they move, they stand up and down with these legs. So it creates kind of a...
This is what I didn't like about the Dave Littell video, and I understand he was aiming at a very beginner audience, but I think his description of it is it was going to lead to something like this.
Bouncing up and down effect with their movement, okay? When you are moving in fencing, you want to maintain this level of bent knees, okay? So as you're moving, your upper body should not be bouncing up and down, traveling up and down. So you want to keep these knees bent as you're moving, okay? So if you were to cover up the bottom half of my body, it should look like I'm just moving on one of those escalators, right? I'm just gliding back and forth without that bouncing up and down motion, okay? So keeping those knees bent as you move is really, really crucial. All right, so the next common mistake that I see a lot of beginners make when they're first starting out is they are taking really big steps. When you are taking big steps, that kind of causes you to stand up and down. So if you can make your steps smaller, that will help you keep those knees bent.
Small steps,
low.
many steps.
Okay. Also, like I said in the beginning of the video, fencing is a game of just centimeters. And being able to control the distance is extremely important in fencing. If you are taking really big movements and big steps, it is much harder to control the distance down to that centimeter. So,
and no one got time for footwork in the kitchen.
The more you're going to be able to control.
What's the matter? You don't put the cookies in the oven with a lunge? That's point control if you can get it right in the slot.
You can do in fencing. So keep those steps small. Don't overreach. Another bad habit with the big steps is a lot of fencers, when they advance, they'll take a bigger step with their back foot.
Yeah, this is
closing
important
their
too.
heels together,
And then you
okay?
end up off balance.
Now, this
is pretty
not
good so
good
far.
for
I like
a few
this.
reasons. Number one, when your feet come close together, it makes you want to stand up. It's hard to have bent knees and have your heels together, okay? And the other thing is, if I want to change directions right now, it's really hard for me to change directions if my feet are really close together. The wider my feet is, the wider my stance is, the more easily I can change directions really quickly and really balanced. So keeping those...
There is a little bit of tension here. The wider your stance, the shorter your lunges, sort of inherently. So it's not always... Wider isn't always better, but what he's saying about keeping your on-guard foot distance the same throughout your steps is very important. And, you know, wider is usually better for beginners.
Feet a shoulder width apart is really important. Now, in fencing, there are times when it is important and when it is beneficial to close those heels, but 90% of the time as you're moving, you want to maintain that shoulder width distance in between your feet, okay? So don't close those heels together. Don't take a bigger step with your back foot or take a bigger step with your front foot, closing those heels together. If you step small with the front foot, you also step small with the back foot. When you're retreating, if you step small with the back foot, you also step small with the front foot, maintaining that shoulder width distance in between your feet as you're moving up and down the strip. All right, so the next common mistake that I see a lot of beginners make is with the angle of their feet. So sometimes I'll see fencers moving like this with their front toe not pointed straight directly at their opponent. It's kind of angled in like this, okay? So they're moving back and forth like this with the front foot. Now, if I am fencing and I step a little funky, I'm gonna roll my ankle and injure my knee. Okay, so
this is right. This is what always bugs me about people who do this. See if he mentions the top level people.
That's why it's really important to have your front toe pointed straight forward. That way, when you're stepping, there's no chance of you rolling or twisting your ankle or buckling at the knee. Also, when you're moving, it's important to land on the heel of the front foot and roll down to the toe.
Yeah.
Same with lunging. When I lunge, I want to land on the heel of my front foot and then roll down to the toe.
And put your heel out as far as you can.
If my foot is angled this way, it's really hard for me to land on my heel as I'm stepping. Okay? Now, the same thing.
So you do see a few high-level, mostly epeists, who fence in a sideways stance. And it's a little bit off, but because they're not really stepping, they're bouncing. And so they're bouncing with their feet sideways, and they're bouncing like a shuffle step kind of a deal. But if you watch carefully, when they lunge, they always turn their foot forward and land heel first toe. Because of that sideways chain on the ankle, also because that's how you get the most reach. So if you see somebody like Seth Kelsey do that, notice that he's bouncing, he's not stepping, and when he lunges or takes even a real step, he turns his foot back in line.
As the front foot, having that front foot pointed directly at your opponent, I also see a lot of problems with the back foot, the angle of the back foot. A lot of fencers will have their
This is a lot less
toe
important.
pointed forward, their back foot toe pointed forward.
It's a little important
now,
for beginners.
When my back toe is pointed forward, that turns my hips and squares my body up to my opponent. Now, if my
That's
body
fine.
is squared up to my opponent, my target area is a lot bigger. There's a lot more for my opponent to hit, and it
Turns
also
out that's not a big deal.
shortens my reach.
You get so close now and point control is so good that the amount of target you're showing them just isn't that important anymore, because they'll be able to hit anything anyway. And you need to get so close that reach is not particularly important, and you can get that with your feet anyway. It's more important to stand in a comfortable stance for you. What turning the back leg can do is still power from your lunge. So you have to be careful with that.
But if I just turn this back toe, so
It's a little
my
bit outdated.
back foot is pointed, I'm making
Not
an
horrible.
L with my feet, or a 90-degree angle with my feet. Now that turns my hip, so it makes my target area a lot skinnier to my opponent, as opposed to this, where my target area is squared off to my opponent. All I gotta do is turn this back foot, and that turns this shoulder, making my target area a lot skinnier, a lot harder to hit. Also, if my shoulders are turned this way, it extends my reach. I can reach almost an inch further than if my shoulders were squared off, okay? So, that is really crucial, the angle of those feet. You want to be making a 90-degree
6 out of 7 ain't
or
bad.
an L with your feet, okay? So, and maintaining that angle as you're moving
It can
up
be
and
more
down the
comfortable to
strip.
turn a bit.
Okay, so not turning the back
Yeah,
toe
it's whatever's
forward,
comfortable.
not turning the front toe forward like this. Okay?
Just not
So the angle of the
important
feet is really
the
important.
angle of your rear foot or
Right,
how
so
much
the
your body
next
is
common
turned.
mistake that I see a
Except
lot of
for
fencers
your
make
rear foot and how much you can push off your
not
heel when you lunge.
having a rocking motion. So when they are advancing forward, when you are advancing, you want to step and land on the heel first, rolling
Yeah,
down to the
so we saw
toe,
this with
then
the
stepping
Dave
up with
Littell
the back
video
foot.
as well on the
So
basics.
creating a rocking motion
You
with
want to
this front
push off
foot.
and land on your heel, and then you want
And when
your
you're
advances to
retreating,
kind
you
of
wanna
just be
landing
your
on the toe first, and then rolling
really
down
short
to the heel.
lunges.
Okay, so
Advancing.
when you're backing up or going backwards or retreating, you're landing on the toe first, rolling down to the heel, and then stepping back. When you're advancing, you want to land on the heel first, then roll down to the toe, and then step up the back foot. Okay? So
You also
it's
don't even have to
really
roll down to the
important
toe.
that
You can just go
kinda
heel and
have
then
this
keep
rocking
going afterwards.
motion
It's a lot of
with
fun.
Your feet. Okay, so rolling from the heel to the toe, going forward, and stepping on the toe and rolling down to the heel as you're going back. All right, so the next common mistake that I see a lot of fencers make is what I call the zombie effect. So, a lot of beginner fencers that I see will step and they'll slide, they'll drag this back foot behind them, or they'll drag their front foot back as they're retreating, okay?
Yep.
If you're not making actual steps, that's gonna slow you down, okay? So you don't wanna
And
slide
wear your shoes,
foot
too.
behind you as if it were a dead leg and you're a zombie just dragging your limbs across the floor, okay? You want to be actively making small and concise steps, lifting the feet completely off the ground as you're moving forward and backwards. You don't want to slide the foot or drag it behind you as you're moving, okay? This is not proper technique.
Yeah.
And it will really
Nobody's talked
slow you
about this
down
yet, but
and
that's really
hinder your
important.
progress as
Step,
you
step,
get
step,
more and
not
more advanced.
not drag.
So concentrate on making really small steps, lifting those feet all the way off the ground as you're stepping. Now, you don't want to step really big, right? I'm not lifting my feet really high off the ground as I'm moving. They're only coming up maybe about a half an inch or so, maybe even less, maybe a couple centimeters off the ground.
Good drill for
as
this
I'm
is to
moving
do with a
forward and
ladder
backwards.
drill,
Okay?
like a step ladder,
Don't
but in
slide
on
those
guard.
feet. Don't be a zombie on the fencing strip.
I thought that
Okay.
when you said don't be a zombie, I was sure he was going to talk about zoning out while you fence, which is a big issue, but I guess it's not technically a footwork issue.
And so for the last tip of the day, the last mistake that I see a lot of beginners make, there are lots more, but for this video I'm only doing 7, and this one is really important. It has to do with the upper body, okay? Your upper body controls your accuracy of the blade, and it also controls your balance on the strip. If your upper body is not in the proper position, you're going to have horrible point control. You're going to miss your
We
target
saw this
a
way
lot.
back with
You're not gonna be able to
the
get
S-Class
back
video.
if you miss or
We was
if
talking
you're
about
carried
not
because
leaning
your
forward.
body won't be in the correct position to make a counteraction if your first action fails. So having a really good balanced and solid upper body is super important in fencing. Now, the way I like to look at it is when you're in the unguard position,
This is one of the big
your
reasons you
legs
really need
are
a strong
making
core.
up the frame of a house, okay? So my calves make up the walls or the sides of the house, right? And then from here, this makes the roof of the house going up to a point. Now, you want to picture having your upper body be balanced on the tip of the roof of the house, right? So if my upper body is leaning forward, my body's going to fall off the roof of the house. It's not going to be balanced. If my upper body is leaning forward here, it's going to fall off the roof of the house. If I'm leaning backwards, it's going to fall off the roof of the house. If I'm leaning this way, it's going to fall off the roof of the house.
Okay. Leaning gets a lot of talk because there are high-level fencers who lean very successfully. And to do it successfully requires a ton of core strength. Basically, what you do is you build this kind of like this house where you stay balanced, and then you lean forward from your torso, staying balanced and keeping your center of gravity over your body. What a lot of lower level fencers do is will lean forward from the hips and throw their whole body weight off. And that's what he's trying to get you to avoid here, which you should do. This is good advice, especially forward and backwards like that.
So you want to make sure that it's nice and balanced right on the tip of the roof of the house. So the upper
If I'd
body
have known
is
we were
nice
playing a
and
drinking
straight and
game, I
solid
would have
as
brought
you're
some
moving.
whiskey.
You don't want to be hunching forward like this with your butt out in the air, okay? You want to have your butt
Yeah,
underneath you.
butt out is
almost
another
like
big
you're
thing.
Sitting down in a chair with your back straight, okay? So this will really help your accuracy.
This is a pretty good video,
The
though.
less your upper body moves, the more accurate you're going to be.
I'm actually probably gonna start linking this to
Moving around a
people.
lot, you'll see that it's also moving my hand, okay?
Although that's probably a good core
my
exercise.
hand is what's controlling my accuracy. So it's really hard to judge my accuracy if my upper body is doing all this movement or isn't in the proper position. So having a nice solid and still upper body will help allow you to have nice control.
That's what we got here. But yeah, that was really good. That was definitely worth checking out. Fencing footwork feints. It would be nice if you had more production value, but I suppose I can't complain about that considering.
What's up, everybody? I'm Coach Tyler with Fencer's Edge, and today we are going to be working on different footwork techniques you can use to fool or trick your opponent. All right, so this is going to be kind of like feinting with the feet. We're going to be going over some aggressive attacking footwork you can use to trick and fool your opponent, as well as some defensive footwork that you can use to fool your opponent and get them to react a certain way. All right, so the first footwork trick that we're going to work on today is the
Giant water ball gang, rise
The
up.
balestra is going to be an offensive trick that you can use to help make your
Henderson,
opponent
balestra.
commit to making a parry. All right, so it's going to be an aggressive action that makes it seem to your opponent that you're launching an attack, and then you.
Okay, so the difference here, right? How is he describing a balestra? It's something you use to trick your opponent into thinking you're making an attack. How did OSM describe a balestra? It's something you use to gain distance. This is a much better definition and a much better usage of the technique.
Can disengage or make a feint, or even press and continue.
Sleeping cat's
a bit,
important.
Deeper with your attack if they're trying to hold distance. All right. So let's break down the balestra. So from the unguard position, we're going to kind of hop forward and pull your back leg underneath.
Oh, I don't like that. You landed on unguard.
Of the front foot. So again, it's hop.
No, I don't like that at all.
You either fire for a lunge, or you can
Because then you have to reset.
press and change to an advance and lunge.
You landed on unguard. That's very bad.
So
That's the same thing Dave Littell was talking about. That was so bad. Was getting your feet together, and he was talking about it in the last video too. You just don't want to ever have your feet together like that.
key aspects to making the balestra are, number one is making sure that you're jumping more forward than you are jumping up in the
That's
air.
important.
Okay? So the next key aspect to the balestra is I'm going to pull my back leg up underneath me. So my unguard position is here. When I land for the balestra, I'm kind of pulling this back foot up closer.
No, I don't like this at all.
It's going to give me more distance with my lunge, and it's going to get me a little bit closer to my opponent than it seems like to
You're
them.
totally out of position
All
there.
right, so the
That's
next
very bad.
important part of the balestra is landing on the toe of this front foot. When I land on the toe, I'm kind of making a popping noise with my foot, and that noise is also meant to draw a strong reaction from my opponent.
The last thing you want is a strong reaction from your opponent when your feet are judged up like this, and the only thing you can do is like maybe lunge because you have momentum, but you can't really lunge from that position because you can't push off your back leg because it's under you, not behind you, and you can't go backwards because your feet are together. You can only really like parry or fall over.
So the other important part of the balestra,
We're gonna have to watch a third video after this. So we got one good video and one bad video.
when you sink down low, it
We gotta get a
gives you the
tiebreaker.
appearance of making a lunge. So when I make my lunge, you'll notice my upper body drops, initiating the final aspect of
I
my
can't watch
attack,
another balestra.
and it will draw my opponent to either react to parry or to try and pull me short.
If you jump at your opponent with your arm back, they're going to lunge. See, look! That's not a balestra, that's an advance. Yeah, okay. He's doing it. I don't know how you were told to do a balestra, but let's get... Yeah, look how close his feet are. They're in a normal, like, you know, I'm a frame late or whatever, but like they're in a normal on guard position. That's how you want to do a balestra. Yeah, see? They landed on
Alright,
guard.
so the next footwork trick that we're going to go over is the
That was really bad.
skip. All right. Now the skip is very similar to the balestra, except for my front foot is not going to land on the ground.
No, don't skip. We're just going to skip the skip. It's the same thing we said. This is an old Saber video, and they don't do that anymore, and it was only ever useful in Saber.
Or to try and make the distance wider when you are on the attack. So
Is this the back foot thing?
These next two are attacking footworks, and they're meant to make the distance get wider between you and your opponent. So maybe you don't want to finish, you want to be patient, push them all the way to the end of the strip, and then commit to making your final attack. But sometimes your opponent is too close and in your face, and you want to build that distance in between you so you have more room to work and build an attack, right? So the first footwork feint of this type of trying to build the distance is going to be the skitter step, all right? So I could be moving nice and smooth and then make small skitters.
This
right?
is good.
Now or small fast advances. Now the key
Just
here
anything
is
to
you
throw
don't
off the
want
tempo.
to step really.
And we talked in the whoever the Nova Fencing Club video where she was talking about measuring distance by steps. This will totally mess with anybody who does that, which is a surprising number of people. And even then, your opponent is feeling the rhythm you're moving at, even if they're not measuring the steps. And throwing off that rhythm will shock them a little bit. And anything you can do to throw them off balance is good.
Big, you want to keep those steps really small, but you want to add kind of like an aggressive initiation of that. So it gets them to back up quickly.
Tense up a little bit, maybe is what he's trying to say. It's not bad.
Build the space in between you and your opponent. Okay? So again.
So this is interesting because I don't know a lot of footwork techniques that are explicitly to increase space while you're going forward. So this is an interesting novel variant in that sense.
Smoothly pressing and then building that distance. All right? Now the key thing that you want to look out for here is when you make that skitter step, if your opponent is searching for a counter time where they're trying to counterattack you, you want to be ready to finish when you're making that skitter step, right? So if I'm pressing and I make that skitter.
Okay, so that's just any prep. This is a prep step to draw a reaction from your opponent. And you should know every time you do a prep, you should know what reaction you're going for and be ready to deal with it when you get it. So this is right, but this is universal.
If my opponent doesn't buy that feint and they counterattack in, right? But most of the time your opponent will try to accelerate. When they see you speeding up, they're going to try and speed up their retreat as well, and you can kind of slow back down. So you're speeding up without gaining a whole lot of distance forward, which is going to help you build that space in between you and your opponent. You can even start slow.
I'm not sure why you'd want to.
Slow back down to help make that distance.
Well, you'd want to increase distance, but it works really well in Saber, exactly like this.
All right. So the next footwork, I like to call it the slide and stop, or the slide and check footwork.
Check step.
So again, this footwork, I'm using it to help kind of build distance and keep the distance wider.
This guy needs an editor.
Me and my opponent. And also with this footwork, I'm trying.
Which is again hypocritical of me. But I'm not making videos. I'm making live streams, so it's much more normal.
When they make that counterattack, depending on the timing of the counterattack, I can either just finish, I can make a parry, or I can back up out of the way and make their counterattack fall short and then punish them for their mistake. All right. So the stop check footwork or the slide check footwork is a little bit more complicated.
Enough if this guy just says a Saber.
Basically what I'm doing is trying to build a rhythm and a tempo and then suddenly break that rhythm in tempo. Okay, I'm also trying to bait them to counterattack because I will be stopping during my progression down the strip. So that's one thing that you need to be aware of is that with each stop in foil and in Saber, you're giving away your right of way, right? But
like, kind of. Technically. Practically, not really.
Start your next
Very good, thank you.
Before your opponent.
You're a law-abiding citizen who pays her taxes.
Will still maintain the right of way. All right. So just to give you an example, so the slide check footwork would look like this, right? Right. So I would build that rhythm, and then at some point I would break that rhythm and.
Yeah, he's a Saber, 100%.
Or
This is not wrong. This is just all very Saber specific because it's all about modifying the distance while moving forward. And in foil, in epee 100%, and to a lesser extent in foil, you're modifying the distance from basically a static position, where you're moving around a static position. And in Saber, you're moving forward and changing the distance that way. So that's what this is. None of this is bad. The Balestro was a very bad explanation, and the skip was outdated. But this is all very Saber centric.
Counterattack, and I would either finish.
Yes, this is why you get cookies. It's your tax rebate.
Right. So after I've initiated my next step forward, I can finish. Or if they're initiating their counterattack in time, I can make a parry and repose. Or with this kind of step back, that check. When they counterattack, I can pull short and then.
Yeah, this is a really good saber bit of footwork.
So again, here and step back.
So one other thing he's doing that's really good is he's talking about the effect it has on his opponent, not just its merits on its own.
So what I'm doing for this is I'm transferring my weight to the front leg and kind of skipping forward, landing both.
Ooh, tempo change.
All right, so the next footwork is more about the tempo or the timing of the steps and
fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, fast, slow,
different
slow, slow,
footwork
fast, slow,
techniques
fast, fast.
you use. You're basically using a tempo change to make the feint to get your opponent to react a certain way. So this one is going to be a slow march into a fast march, into an abrupt stop, and then an explosive finish, all right? So what I'm trying to do here is lull my opponent with a slow march, and then I accelerate to get them to accelerate and match that tempo, and then I stop.
You could use this as an epee if you break the distance first, and your opponent lets you do that. And then you can close distance with these various patterns for different reactions from your opponent. But then you would do them, and then you would have to reset a couple of steps back.
And then fast again, and it's really hard for them to get out of the way of that tempo change. Okay, so I'll demonstrate it here. I'll build slow, accelerate, stop, and then accelerate again and finish. All right, so it's playing with the tempo changes and accelerating and decelerating very quickly and sharply.
I've been watching a bunch of Sarah Balzer, who is the world #1 saberette, and she is phenomenal at tempo changes. She can go fast to slow, so fast, so just so quickly.
All right, so how to trick your opponent on the defense. All right, and the first one is going to be a fake counterattack or a false counterattack. I'm going to try and trick my opponent into thinking that I'm counterattacking and getting them to finish their attack or to search for a parry, and depending on which action they take is how I will react to that. Okay? So the fake counterattack, I am going to step in place with my front foot. All right, so just lifting and stomping. So I want to create a little bit of a noise here. Again, that noise is going to be.
I'm not a fan of like the do a noise to get your opponent to react thing. I don't think it works on people.
So I'm not going to be stepping forward. I'm going to be stepping in place, and I'm going to sink down on this front leg and give.
We saw this sink before from Yarek and Tim, I think.
So.
And then we were talking about it there.
Make that counterattack, and whether or not they finish, I can back up and parry repose.
Very saber thing.
If I get them to stop moving and search for a parry, then I can disengage and.
Good saber technique, but just saber.
Okay. And if they don't react to this feint at all, and they keep pressing forward, I can change it to a real counterattack and close them out.
Close out in 4. Classic saber.
Off of that fake. All right. Also, after the fake, you can switch to fast retreats and get back. You can also.
If your opponent is pressing an epee, you can do this with like a wrist shot, some kind of a threat there to get a reaction.
Draw your opponent to make a reaction. Okay. And
you could probably do it
down because again that makes it
without
look like
adjustment in foil.
Attacking or lunging in because my body sinks down. It also makes my legs very strong and ready to make a big fast reaction. If I'm straight-legged, I'm going to be slower and I have less balance, so I want to really sit down deep with that fake. And the next part is kind of giving a shoulder and arm pump as well.
You gotta give them something to react to, some kind of a threat.
With that fake, I'm just going to give like a little 80% extension.
Yep.
And a little bit of a shoulder dip to try and draw my opponent to finish their attack when I want them to, or to stop and search for a parry, or to ignore it and then I'll catch them with a real counterattack.
Yeah, there it is in foil.
All right, and so the last one that we're going to go over today is going to be a fake retreat counterattack. Okay, so I'm going to step back on my back leg, making it look like I'm retreating,
Yeah.
and then I'll counterattack forward and catch my opponent in preparation. For this action, I want to be sure that I'm not transferring my weight all the way to the back leg, right? So when I do this half step, I'm not transferring my weight to that back leg. I'm keeping the weight over my front leg when I make that fake count.
This works really well, at least in épée, when you're in control of the distance.
Then the arm,
You step back, they step forward. You step forward. What he was, some guy was talking about in phase fencing. If your opponent is in phase with you, this is a great way to break it. Half step back, they step forward, they step forward, half step back, they step forward, you lunge into their step forward. Easy money.
But yeah, so I could be making my retreats, make a fake retreat, and then counterattack in. Alright? So it's kind of a half step with the back foot, and then counterattacking forward.
He's not really going forward with it. He's just, he's not going forward with it. Not a good example. All right, that one was okay. Not great, but okay. Skips and balusters are very bad. The rest of it was very foil saber centric. How to flush attack. All right, this will be the decider. See if he's just a half decent saber, if he actually knows his stuff.
What's up, everybody? I'm Coach Tyler with Fencer's Edge, and today we are going to be going over the flesh attack. And today we're going to be focusing on épée specifically.
My God, he's got sleeves on.
Use this move in foil. However, it is much more frequently used in épée. And
that's false.
Do not use this move in saber because you will get carded or
That's true. Unless you're.
So this is not a move that you can use in saber.
You see a lot of single tempo fleshes in épée. You see a lot more running attacks in foil. Look up Otayuki, who was so fast and so good at those.
We're going to be focusing on épée today. So the flesh attack is a very powerful and fast attack to get to your opponent as soon as possible from a wider distance than you would be able to score from, let's
That's
say,
false.
lunge.
You score
So
flushes from a closer distance.
Very quickly. So today we're going to be covering a lot of different aspects of the flesh attack. We're going to be, first of all, breaking down the mechanics of how to actually perform the move. Then I'll be giving you some tips on how you can judge the correct distance and how you can protect yourself with the flesh. All right, so let's break down the body mechanics of the flesh attack. So just like a lot of moves in fencing, it all starts from having a really solid on-guard position with this nice deep knee bend. This is where all of your power, speed, and balance comes from. If you're trying to perform this flesh attack with straight legs, it's not going to be as explosive, you're not going to be as balanced, and it's not going to be as fast. So number one aspect is definitely having this deep knee bend. All right? So the first thing that happens with the flesh attack is that the arm extends. This is really, really crucial and important for épée fencing. In foil, it's not so important, but in épée, it is absolutely crucial that the first
That's true. That's one of the problems we had with the OSM guy, was he had his épée as his foilist extending first.
You are starting the
Oh, they have a Gardeur there in the back.
not leading with your arm. It makes it much easier for your opponent to counterattack you.
You commit, your arm is back, they extend, and you just ram your elbow right into their tip.
Flesh attack is that this front shoulder drops and moves towards the target area. Okay? And the backhand reaches back.
This is already bad.
Really extending your reach as much as
Oh,
possible.
this is bad.
The next stage of the flesh is pushing off of the
Did you guys catch that? See, look at his back leg.
your reach as much as possible. The next
Cut. There was a cut right there, so he could get his back leg bent back in position because he was so far out of it.
stage of the flesh
Good
is
grief.
pushing off of this back leg and stepping in front. So that back leg from behind you to in front of you. So you're landing in this position for the flesh. Now from here,
so this is what I mean. This is a hugely, grossly over-exaggerated flesh, and this is probably about his lunge distance. So flesh is just straight up a shorter attack than a lunge.
Last stage of the flesh is to push and drive in off of that back foot.
That's completely wrong.
All right, so let's break
That's
it down.
complete. I've never even heard somebody say that before. That you land with your back leg and then you push off with your front leg. That makes no sense. Do not do that. This is very bad.
Step by step, one more time in slow motion.
I'm going to remake his beginner footwork mistake.
Leans, backhand reaches, and then I'm pushing off of the
So see, he can't do it. And fair is fair. He's a saber, but if he's going to be teaching this, he's got to be able to do it. And you can see he's forward.
Shoulder leans, backhand
and he comes
reaches,
backwards, which is horrible. And then he goes up and then forward.
Landing here, making sure that I'm turning my shoulders as much as possible, giving myself the most reach, and making my target area as skinny as
And now he says he's supposed to push off here, but he doesn't have any push left.
Turn here with my shoulders like this. Now the last stage of the flesh is pushing off of.
No, your flesh is already long over. This makes. I can't even. This was awful.
The last stage is going to be pushing off of that foot and driving.
We're done with this video.
Your opponent, not running.
We're done with this video, and we're gonna say, don't watch this one. That beginner footwork mistake one was good. The rest of this is teaching you wrong things about fencing. Yeah. Okay, that is all I have. And I forget what we said about everything. I think we said Yarrick and Tim was good. Dave Littell was very good. S-Class was very good. And the rest of them you can skip. Dave Littell is no longer putting out videos, which is unfortunate. But definitely go subscribe to S-Class and Yarrick and Tim.